You know that feeling, right? The knot in your stomach when you look at your bank account, the racing thoughts when a bill comes due. We all know what financial stress feels like. But what if I told you that feeling isn't just a feeling? It's a real, measurable physical event happening inside your body. We're talking about a full-on hormonal cascade, the same one your ancestors had when they were facing down a predator. Today, we're going to dig into the hard science of how your wallet literally gets under your skin and can actually change your health.
And look, this is not some small fringe issue. We're talking about millions and millions of people. This quote from research psychologist Paul Abricus, it just hits you, right? He doesn't mince word. He doesn't say people are worried. He says they are suffering terribly. And he draws a direct line from that suffering to their health. That's exactly what we're getting into, that very real physical bridge between your finances and your biology.
Okay, so if that quote didn't convince you, this data will. This is where that idea of suffering becomes, well, shockingly clear. Just look at these numbers. For folks with high debt stress, ulcers and digestive issues are more than 3 times more common. Severe anxiety, it leaps from 4% to almost 30%. And headaches, wow, from 15% all the way up to 44%. Depression, another massive jump. These are not small changes, folks. This is a huge, flashing red light telling us something very physical is going on.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First up, we'll see just how common this really is. Then, we're going to pop the hood and dive into the biology, your brain's built-in alarm system. We'll talk about what happens when that alarm just won't shut off. After that, we'll look at the real-world consequences for your mind and your body. And we'll wrap up by talking about what you can actually do about it.
So let's start with that first point. Before we even get to the brain chemistry, let's establish a baseline. Just how universal is this experience?
The answer is, it's incredibly common. This survey data makes it crystal clear. For a huge chunk of households, basically half the population is either just getting by or flat out finding it difficult. Half. So if you've ever felt that squeeze, that constant pressure, please know you are absolutely not alone. This is a massive, shared human experience.
All right, so how does a worry in your mind turn into a physical problem in your body? Well, it all comes down to some really old, ancient wiring in our brains, the famous fight-or-flight response. This is where a thought becomes a physical command.
So here's how it works in 3 simple steps. First, your brain perceives a threat. And here's the crazy part. Your brain's ancient wiring can't tell the difference between a lion chasing you and an overdue bill notice. To it, it's all just danger. That trips an alarm in a tiny command center in your brain called the hypothalamus. Step 2, the hypothalamus sends out an emergency signal through something called the HPA axis. You can think of it as the body's 911 call. And finally, step 3, that call goes straight to your adrenal glands, and bam, they flood your system with a cocktail of hormones, especially adrenaline and cortisol.
Now let's talk about cortisol for a second. It often gets painted as the bad guy, right? The stress hormone. But in the right dose, it's actually a lifesaver. It's designed to give you a quick burst of energy and focus. It dumps fuel, glucose, into your bloodstream for your muscles and makes your brain super sharp so you can deal with an immediate danger. It's an amazing system for a sprint. The problem is, financial stress isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And that's where things start to go very wrong.
So what happens when the threat isn't a lion you can run away from, but a stack of bills that's waiting for you every single day? Well, that's when your body's alarm system gets stuck in the on position. You're no longer in a short fight. You're under a constant, draining siege.
And this is the fundamental difference between good stress and bad stress. Acute, short-term stress is for survival. It helps you, then it goes away, and everything resets. But chronic stress, it's a system malfunction. The alarm is always blaring, and that constant exposure to stress hormones starts to disrupt pretty much every process in your body. It goes from helpful to deeply damaging.
And there's a scientific term for this. It's called allostatic load. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like the wear and tear on a car engine that's been redlining for way too long. It's the cumulative biological price your body pays for enduring that siege day in and day out. It's the measurable cost. Okay, so we've got the mechanism, the stuck alarm, the wear and tear. Now let's talk about the real-world damage, the fallout. What does this constant biological siege actually do to us? Now, this next part is, honestly, it's kind of mind-blowing. A study in a major scientific journal found something incredible. They discovered that paying off just one single debt account, it could even be a small one,
boosted people's brain function as much as getting a check for over $1,000. Let that sink in for a second. It wasn't about the total dollar amount. It was about the number of stressful things you're juggling in your head. Each separate debt is like an app running in the background, draining your mental battery. And closing just one of them frees up an incredible amount of processing power.
And that mental drain has a very real physical cause. All that cortisol sloshing around literally starts to damage parts of your brain, especially the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory and learning. It messes with your ability to focus and make smart decisions. And you can see the vicious cycle here, right? The stress makes it harder to think clearly about how to solve your financial problems, which of course just creates more stress.
And it's not just your brain. This constant state of emergency takes a toll on your whole body. Your immune system gets suppressed, so you get sick more often. Your blood pressure stays high, which is terrible for your heart and increases the risk of heart attack and stroke. Your digestion gets all messed up. Remember those ulcers we talked about at the beginning? It's a whole cascade of negative consequences, all stemming from that one stuck alarm.
Okay, that was a lot of doom and gloom, I know. But here's where the story pivots. Because it's not hopeless. This is where we talk about the counter-offensive. If you can't just snap your fingers and make the financial problem disappear, what can you do?
This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? For most of us, getting rid of the source of the stress isn't something we can do overnight. So, if the problem is still there, what can we do to stop that damaging biological chain reaction inside of us? And the answer is a real paradigm shift. The goal isn't just about changing your bank account balance. It's about changing how your body and brain react to that balance. And believe it or not, just understanding the biology, knowing what we've just talked about, is the first most powerful step. It lets you step back and say, okay, this is a biological process, not just me failing. And that gives you the power to intervene.
So, how do you actually intervene? Well, one of the most studied and effective methods is something called mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR. Think of it like a workout program for your brain. It's an 8-week course that uses simple, secular meditation to teach you how to create a little bit of space between a stressor, like a bill arriving, and your body's automatic freak-out response. It's all about training yourself to respond, not just react. And it's built on these core ideas, which are really more like skills. Things like practicing non-judgment, so you're not beating yourself up for feeling stressed. Cultivating patience. Practicing acceptance instead of constantly fighting reality. These aren't just fluffy concepts, they are practical mental tools for building resilience to literally any kind of stress. Now, we have to be real about the science here. A really interesting study did find that people who were more mindful also had lower cortisol levels. But, as the researcher herself pointed out, we don't know for sure which way the arrow points. Does mindfulness lower your cortisol? Or do people with naturally lower cortisol just find it easier to be mindful? It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. The science is still figuring it out, but the connection is definitely there, and it's powerful. So, let's bring it all home. If you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. Financial stress is not just in your head. It is a physical event happening inside your body. That's not an opinion, that's biology. Your ancient brain can't tell the difference between a predator and a credit card bill, but the modern thinking part of your brain can, and that knowledge is power. It's the first step to taking back control. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If our bodies are keeping a running tally of our stress, like a biological ledger, and all that chronic worry is a debit, what are you going to do to start making some deposits on the other side? How do we start to balance the account?